Today, there are approximately 540 million people who can be counted on the side of the free nations. There are 800 million on the communist side. And there are 600 million others who must be counted as non-committed.
Well, I think it's absolute outrage. I mean, I think it's a direct attack by the Home Office and perhaps the security services behind them on journalists in general, myself in particular. I think it's an attempt by the government to tell journalists that the government, rather than journalists, decide what they are to investigate.
To understand why two American investigative journalists were being deported in May 1977, one has to understand the functions of the intelligence services at the time. In this period, the GRU and KGB operations in Britain were greatly diminished after Lord Home's decision to expel 105 diplomats. It appears that much of British intelligence's work centred around rooting out vociferous or even gentle dissent. Enter the names of Mark Hosenball and Phillip Agee, both of whom shared a special interest in the activities of the CIA and related agencies working at home or abroad, and latterly the relationship with the agency's opposite numbers in Britain.
The reason that the Eavesdroppers article was serious was because of GCHQ's involvement with the National Security Agency of the USA.
Clearly, the eavesdropper articles, which are purely factual stuff, which people ought to have known about GCHQ, obviously that did irritate people tremendously.
Many people at the time thought, and were probably right, that article upset the Americans as much as it upset the British.
The two men couldn't have been more different. Agee was inducted virtually out of college into the CIA and worked from 1956 to 1968 as an intelligence operative. Hosenball, on the other hand, had quite different origins, his father being no less than the chief legal advisor to NASA.
Mark never wanted to have anything to do with Phillip Agee or Phillip Agee's left-wing supporters. Mark Hosenball was quite a different person from Phillip Agee. Mark Hosenball is the classic American investigative journalist, a reporter for whom all that matters is the story. I mean, he's not interested in the politics of the story or the significance, socially or politically or anything like that. He's just interested in the story. These people, by the way, are extremely valuable.
Philip had turned to writing because of what he wanted to say about American foreign policy, particularly in Latin America.
Both men arrived in Britain in the early 1970s and quite independently of each other began to investigate areas of intelligence that were little known to the general public at the time. All the material published in this article was, however, in the public domain.
There are public domains and there are public domains. There are publications that regularly research and report information in great detail in the security and intelligence services, but they're restricted to quite a small community of people who are involved in working with or for them or discussing around them. And the government is perfectly happy about this. But if they got into the popular print or popular TV, then they'd be able to outcry.
Duncan Campbell got all of it from open sources by reading of technical journals. I think that the establishment probably thought that we had moles on the inside, and it just wasn't true. Duncan Campbell was an extremely accomplished technical journalist.
As far as anyone knows, it was the first major article about GCHQ ever written at all.
And on November the 15th, 1976, Hosenball was politely asked by the Home Office to remove himself from the UK. 2 days later, Agee received a similar notice. Neither men were given a detailed description as to the possible charges laid against them, but instead the Home Office heightened the suspicion that some sinister pressure from across the water was responsible by using, in the case of Agee's notice, the following words: maintaining contacts harmful to the security of the United Kingdom associating with foreign intelligence officers.
What upsets the establishment is American stuff. That's what upsets. That's what really upsets the British government is if they've got the Americans on their back. They don't like that at all.
The Anglo-American alliance has been since Roosevelt brought America into the Second World War, the core of British foreign policy. The relationships, in fact we wrote about this, the relationships between the United States and the United Kingdom on technical intelligence, surveillance, probably on field intelligence, have been very close for 70, 80 years. So if the Americans felt worried, then the British were entitled, well, not entitled, but the British would certainly, shall we say, feel sympathetic to the worry the Americans are expressing, but we know now that's the way the world works.
It's very interesting that if you look at all the instances of major official secrecy cases and controversies over security in Britain, they all the serious ones involve things involving the USA.
There certainly were some surprising people turning up to speak on behalf of a radical journalist and ex-CIA agent, Morton Halpern, a former aide to Nixon's Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, Nobel author Sean McBride, and numerous other witnesses who were making the authorities' decision to deport Agee look rather ridiculous.
Ramsey Clark, who'd been Johnson's Attorney General, described it, came over as part of, to help the defence team, described it as a lawless procedure, and it was.
At this point then, it seemed an odd moment for the intelligence community to further embroil itself in the growing furore over its activities. Yet on Saturday the 19th of February 1977, Special Branch, in its master MI5's wisdom, was instructed to arrest 3 members of the Agee Hosenball Defence Committee under the Official Secrets Act of 1976. They would increase the growing entanglement of the intelligence community, having its actions open to public scrutiny, by becoming the defendants in the notorious ABC case, so named after the surnames of each defendant. Each of them faced a sentence of 14 years imprisonment if found guilty.
One day we had a letter from a soldier called John Berry, who'd been with the Signals Regiment, 9 Signals Regiment in Cyprus, which is an eastern outpost of GCHQ, where they do all their snooping on the Middle East. And he came forward to give a statement in support of Agee and Hosenball, which he did.
We often joke that the crime was assembly, i.e. getting the facts together. Of course, it changed slightly when John Berry came into Time Out and spoke to Crispin Aubrey and then was introduced to Duncan Campbell, because John had been a soldier in Signals and knew something of the more technical aspects of army field equipment.
One of the reporters on the paper, Crispin Aubrey, arranged to meet John Berry to interview him for a story for Time Out magazine, and to meet with Duncan Campbell because he was the electronics expert and knew all about the systems of vetting and surveillance. Really no one should have been surprised that the conversation on the phone through which they fixed up their interview was tapped, since that's what sort of thing they were always writing about. And the Special Branch arrived and arrested them, and amid some fairly chaotic scenes took the 3, that's Crispin Aubrey the journalist, John Berry the soldier, and Duncan Campbell the expert the electronics journalist, took them off to a police station. They were charged under initially Section 1 and Section 7 of the Official Secrets Act with spying, basically. And of course it was an absolute outcry, and of course all the dissident activity got even worse.
John was disillusioned about the internal security use that his role was taking, and I think he was only a corporal in Army Signals. So that's why he came in, but he was the only person who'd ever been on the inside. I don't think a corporal's very near to real secrets.
A year after the deportations, the ABC case ended. Each defendant was given conditional release. The trial appeared to have produced little good for the intelligence community or the government in Britain, whilst causing the maximum embarrassment and publicity.
The ABC case was an important case because it looked as if it was possible that journalists and a whistleblower were going to go to prison. They carried initially a 14-year sentences section on the spying section, and although they kept juggling and changing the charges, gradually retreating, there was a possibility that all three of them could have gone to prison right until almost the end of the trial.
I think what brought them together, what motivated Phillip Agee in the first place, and John Berry, was that they were Democrats. And they'd gone, in Philip's case, into the Peace Corps and then the CIA, and in John's case, into the Army, because they believed in a certain structure of society, and they'd seen that being misused, in Philip's case in Latin America, and that's definitely what motivated him. He went into the CIA because he was told that America would defend democracy in Latin America, and he very quickly saw the opposite, and that's what began to disillusion him with the CIA.
As satellite technology became increasingly significant in providing governments with information during the later years of the Cold War, the value of operatives in the field may have perhaps diminished. The emphasis on human resource intelligence then appeared to be placed on employing moles with high-level access information, where operatives could explain what was on each government's mind and sense current trends in belligerency, and on a lower level, monitor and infiltrate the dissenting voices operating at home and abroad. What Agee and Hosenball and numerous other journalists were guilty of was not revealing information to foreign governments, but to people regarded by the intelligence services as the enemy at home. The pointed rhetoric of a later government would make the attempts of Callaghan's administration featured in this programme to look hard-nosed in the face of left-wing, or what some might simply call libertarian criticism, look lame by comparison. Yet it was in the 70s that all administrations took a hand in formulating the behaviour of later governments' use of the Official Secrets Act, as politicians and officials were increasingly assailed with what they deemed to be unhealthy elements within the media.
There'll never be a settlement, nor ought there to be, between journalism and politics. There always ought to be that creative tension.
One thing that became very clear to me as I worked and began to sort out some of the allegations that the administration was making publicly was that there was a very deep disconnect between what the politicians were saying publicly, Dick Cheney talking about, Saddam Hussein, Mohammed Atta, the leader of the 9/11 hijackers, visiting Prague and getting orders from